I don't think Tai Felton is going to be wide receiver 3 for the Vikings. And if you don't like that take, that's fine, but at least hear me out. Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, where we're always trying to learn something new. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day every single day. Today on the show is one that I've been meaning to get to for a while, one that I've been working on for a little bit, kind of in the background, and am finally ready to present. Ever since the draft, day 2 of the draft, the only pick the Vikings make is Tai Felton. I turn on the tape that night, and I go, I don't really like it. I come out with that take on the ensuing show, and boy, some people were angry, and some of you might still be angry. I'm going to do it again. So here's what I don't want to do. I don't want this to become something that I like harp over and over and over and over and over again all off season. Where I'm at with any draft pick that I don't like, I'll give them every puncher's chance in the world to prove me wrong in camp. If they come out in camp and look better and look great and get a bunch of buzz, and Tai Felton's turning heads in camp, everything that anyone thought about him in the draft in his college tape is less important than that, because now he's on a pro field, pro coaches, pro team, and it's really happening. What we can only talk about right now is in theory, but once it's out there in practice, both like in practice, the phrase, but in physical, literal practice, then, all bets are off, right? But let me lay my groundwork. Let me lay down, let me plant my flag and explain why I don't like Tai Felton as a guy who can beat Jalen Nailor. I don't think so at all. Or I don't really even like him that much as an all-force phase special teamer, which is also the intention. We'll get to that as well. And why I generally think the Vikings did it, and that process isn't necessarily good. So there's a lot to get into, but let me begin with the positives, because when I don't like a pick, that doesn't mean I hate every single thing that he's ever touched, that he ever does ever, right? That would be insane. That would be pretty bad analysis. There are some things that Tai Felton does very, very well. And if he does work out and prove me wrong, it'll probably come down to one of these things. So the one route that I think Tai Felton runs like an NFL receiver is the comeback. Speed outs are similar, but really the comeback. Get your head out in front of your toes, right? Run full speed, use all that speed to threaten, get that corner to either back off, turn his hips, both, and then slam on the brakes, cut it down, turn around. There are a few things you want to look for on a comeback that make it a good an NFL comeback, one that'll really get an NFL corner. One, when you cut the brakes, you want to see that rear end really sink. You want to see him sit down into it, not bend at the waist. He does that very well. You want from the first plant step that sort of slams on the brakes to turned around 5 steps, and really consistent about that. Some guys need a little bit extra if they don't have the agility or whatever. There's a technique to that. It's by the time you get to the pros, those are like prerequisites. You'll basically, any pro receiver will be doing it in 5 steps. You'll see their rear end sink down. It's something you want to look for in college. And if not, you go, you got to learn how to run that route. Great at that. Really good at generating separation. I think the main point of Tai Felton is fast guy. He track guy. He ran like a 4.3 something crazy 40 time. You see it on tape. He clearly plays with a lot of God-given speed. In terms of actual athleticism, it's not as like complete of a package. He ran a 4.27 shuttle. That's just okay. Did not run the 3-cone. I don't see a lot of agility on tape. But hey, 4.37 40, we're going to be pretty happy about that. He's a smaller receiver, 6'1", 183. That's on the smaller end of things, right? That's pretty close to the it's a problem small, but I think it's just small. That's just going to be your style small. Like Jordan Addison is smaller, right? Like this can absolutely work out. And because of that, he has to release around guys rather than through them. Jordan Addison's the same way. I would say Justin Jefferson's also the same way, even though he's not as physically small. He plays like a smaller receiver. He always wants to kind of release around you rather than just blowing you off the line, Jamar Chase style, or Calvin Johnson was the god of this. That's all fine. And because he's got the speed, he has the speed absolutely to get off of his landmark and then get back to his landmark. There's a great corner rep against Minnesota that you can see that from, where he gets off of his landmark. No, I'm sorry. It was against Penn State. I'm thinking of a different corner route, but where he has to kind of release outside of the frame of like his route stem and then stack it back up and get to where he's supposed to be. That restacking is something that I don't think he's very consistent at all, but you can see that he has the speed to do it if he can get that habit a little bit better, be a little bit more spatially aware of where his landmark is supposed to be and be more precise. If you got to go off road, you got to get back on the road. And then the other big thing is after catch prowess. I think it's a little overrated, but if you look at like the highlights of his after catch, like the times when he really does break one off, great rep against Villanova. There's a great rep against, I think it was Connecticut, where he's just a better athlete than guys at those schools. And when that comes out, I didn't see a lot of those. I tried to limit my watch to teams that of the tape that I have access to, which is Caddy's cut-ups, which is going to be what I think a lot of people use. So it's like a lot of the draft analysts on consensus big boards and stuff are probably working with largely the same information plus whatever they saw on TV. But I focused on the game against Minnesota, USC, and Penn State. Those were the realist defenses that I had access to, and I didn't watch like the Villanova. I chose to not do the Villanova game, specifically because of like what I saw when I pulled up. Okay, let me just at least see the highlights to look at what people are talking about. Where you just see him churn his feet, and these like bad Connecticut corners just fall off of him or get stiff-armed or whatever. But there is strength. There's actually a rep against Minnesota in particular where he catches the ball on the 5-yard line. He's got a squeeze between two defenders. Those two defenders vice him pretty well, and he just keeps his legs churning, and eventually he gets almost to the goal line on his own, but it takes so long that his teammates are there to push him over the rest of the way. Really, really nice rep. And I think that's really the after catch stuff. He's not like juking guys out of their shoes. Guys are missing tackles on him because they're arm tackles, and he is able to just like keep moving his legs. He's got a balance to that I think works really well. These are the positives of Tai Felton. This is the point of Tai Felton. Plus, he plays special teams a lot. I am not quite putting that in the strength column because I don't see an NFL superstar special teamer that justifies pick 102. If this were a 7th round pick, I'd be like, oh, sweet. He plays enough special teams. He makes the team. That's great. But the standard is higher because this dude got taken on day 2. End of day 2, but still. And if it were beginning of day 3, it would be the same thing. We need more than a 4-phase special teamer from him. We need him to either be like a god at it or do additional things from scrimmage. So it's something, but we'll talk about that as well. So let's talk about the restacking thing real quick. So as a guy that has to, release around like a press cover guy, for one, he's pretty slow at those. And I mean, like his speed is straight line speed. It's not agility speed. And it's not like super explosive speed. He is a long-legged, lanky sort of long stride runner. That's awesome on punt guns, but when you're trying to release off the line of scrimmage, you have to go to actually access his speed. He has to go pretty far outside the frame of that route, and when you do that, you have to stack that thing back up. Addison is great at this. And I'm comparing him to Addison as a smaller framed, less physical receiver because the physicality for Tai Felton in the route is dreadful. Oh my God, does this guy get embarrassed sometimes at the top of his routes, on route stems, by walling defenders or anybody who's trying to physically redirect his route. He will sometimes go ass over tea kettle. I mean, I'm like seriously like helmet on ground, ass in air, like bad. Sometimes it's just that he won't be able to get off that contact and the route will be destroyed, or it'll be, the timing of it will be destroyed so bad that he's no longer accessible to the quarterback and he's out of the progression. But if he can get around you, what you need to teach him is to move that thing back. And that's not just get in the habit. That's having the awareness to know exactly how far you went and how to get back to it. You don't exactly get to look down at your feet and go, where are the hashes? You're running a route. You don't have the time to do that. So you have to have that spatial instinct to be able to get back to where you're supposed to be. And then suddenly you've got the corner in trail position or fully out of phase where he doesn't want to be. This is how Addison wins on go routes a lot of the time. This is how he creates separation a lot of the time. And Tai Felton can start it, but he can't really finish it yet. So that's kind of put that one on the list, the to-do list, when we talk about assembly required. That's a thing Keenan McCardell has to do. The list is a lot longer, and we're going to keep going with it next on Locked On Vikings. Today's episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. If you are a small business owner, or maybe you manage hiring for someone bigger, you just do not get to not think about work. It's always going to be on your mind because hiring is such a huge decision. It's such a big investment into somebody with the salary, training, and all the time you have to put into somebody that you've decided to hire before you can even remotely think about changing that decision, whether you are on the clock or not. It's super easy to post your job for free, share it with your network, and get qualified candidates all in one place. You can even add the hashtag hiring frame. It's like a purple thing to your profile picture to double your chances to reach qualified candidates. 72% of small businesses say that LinkedIn helps them find high quality hires with various features like a tool that can help you write job descriptions and deep candidate insights to make sure that the people that you are actually getting your job in front of are right for you and your company. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Moving along here with the Locked On Vikings podcast, there will be a companion Patreon post to this, which will go over a lot of the same points, but with film. So if you need film, if you need to see what I'm talking about because you don't trust this podcaster and his wide receiver knowledge, I totally get it. Let me show you what I'm doing. You can go find that at patreon.com/LukeBrownNFL. One of the things that I learned when I really learned the most about wide receiver, which was the 2023 draft cycle. I talked to wide receiver coaches at various levels. I talked to like guru trainer types that are, that have worked with big talent and tried to just absorb I watched clinics and stuff that I could have access to. And that was because I knew the Vikings were going to take a corner or a wide receiver that year. And so I really tried to hone in on those positions. And one of the things that I learned that I think is the least discussed element of it relative to how important it is hip and shoulder dissociation. Hip and shoulder dissociation is a concept I've talked about before with quarterback. It's the same thing here. You want your shoulders and your hips to be able to point different directions, especially in a world like receiver where the point is deception. Corners are reading your shoulders and your hips. If they're telling two different stories, you can get hesitation. You can get them to bite on the wrong things. It's a great tool to have. It's also just athletically, if your shoulders are frequently able to turn before your hips do, it will make you a faster turner. This is it's like a fascinating thing that I was able to talk about with a particular wide receiver coach. And he was really proud of he sent me like a video of his group starting every practice with like a stretch that particularly builds this kind of flexibility. This is not a flexibility that I see at all in Tai Felton's tape. And it's one of the reasons that it's really easy to read his routes. Super easy to figure out what he's running. Part of it is that, right? You don't have any deception with your hips and your shoulders. Everything turns the right way. He turns one way, he's going that way. And there's, again, that kind of lack of agility to that. So it's not the most sudden, unless it's specifically a comeback route. It's not the most sudden thing in the world. But the big one is that he jumps his pads. I talked about this in the previous ones, but this is something you never want to do. If you don't believe me, by the way, listen to Steve Smith, Sr., Steve Smith, talk about Tet McMillan, who does it as well. you don't have to take my word for it if you don't trust the podcaster, but I'm right. Deal with it. You shouldn't jump your pads. So that means that when you are, when you're running a route, everything's a go until it isn't, right? That's like the old adage. So if you're running, say, an in-breaker, where that has a route stem and a clearly defined break. Well, that route stem, you want it to look like a go. You run full speed. And then when you break that down, if you watch Justin Jefferson do this, if you watch the level of his pads when he's doing that, they go down a little bit as he's leaning into the route because he's got to look like he's running full speed. And his pads will not come up. His hips and his feet will just sort of slow down, will swing in front of him, and he'll sit into the route. So his pads will kind of will come down like an airplane. And if that sounds familiar to you, it's because I've also talked about this with kickers, and it's the same thing for totally different reasons, but it's kind of the same thing where you don't want to see him stand up into the route and then sit down into it. That tips the route. As soon as the dude's pads come up, you know that his route's going to break off. I think he's a little undisciplined with his eyes too. Sometimes he looks at where he's going to go, and that tips the route. So if you're a corner playing Tai Felton, it's super easy to deny him separation. And I saw a lot of corners that aren't on people's draft lists deny him separation really consistently. This dude was not busting people open. His best plays were finding nice soft spots in zones and, a lot more schematic. And honestly, his best highlights are more highlights of that quarterback who was not good. That's a huge issue to me. And fixing it isn't just break a little bad habit or change the way that he lines up or some super easy fix. He needs to have a repertoire of deception. And maybe it's the lack of thing that is bugging me the most. He doesn't really do anything to set up his routes. It's kind of run to a spot and turn around. I don't love to judge players on what they don't do very often, so this is a bit of a softer point for me. But it does matter that, like, what Jefferson and Addison do, right? If they're gonna run an in-breaker, they'll push that stem to the outside just a little bit more. Or the way Jefferson is the god of this, right? He'll recognize that it's cover two, and he'll push the stem a particular direction to take advantage of that team's cover two rules to get them to bite the way that he wants them to bite so that the route works out. And it's like crazy. There's like 10 layers of like giga brain to it. And that's super awesome for Justin Jefferson. When you're just running and turning around, you basically need the scheme to do all the work for you. And so running and turning around, not turning around very slowly, and by the way, tipping off everything that you're doing is not like a recipe for a lot of success. There are just a lot of reps where he gets totally clamped. And the last thing I think I missed one on my list. I'll wrap it up with a positive because I think I forgot it, which is catching outside of his frame. There are a lot of examples. And again, this is kind of like a lot of the highlight reel is taking in passes that are not perfectly thrown from that crappy Maryland quarterback or both of them. And playing that with soft hands, well-timed, bring it in. I really liked that. I liked the way that he did that with guys draped all over him with the physical, physical coverage coming at you, or just like taking a huge shot and getting the pass in anyways. And that brings me to him as a blocker, which is very much a mixed bag. The word I've been using is he's a willing blocker. And if that sounds like damnation by faint praise, maybe it is. But the effort there, never going to question it. I talked in the post-draft thing about maybe a little bit of a lack of effort with him. And I think it was probably a victim to aesthetic there, where because he's a long strider runner, it doesn't look like he's running very strong. But it wasn't until I was able to pull up the special teams tape and watch him on a kickoff where it was that same thing where it looked like he was running about 80%, but he was clearly the fastest one there already. And it's like, okay, it's just, I fell for the same thing everyone fell for with like Randy Moss many years ago, where it looked like he was being lazy, but really he just takes long steps, and it just physically doesn't, like his body doesn't move fast, but it covers distance quickly, which is actually what you care about. So I'm going to say the effort thing is probably bunk unless like reporting comes out. And especially as a blocker, the effort is there. The problem is, and it comes up in special teams a lot too, that he'll go too deep. He'll like get too close to a potential tackler and then get juked out of his shoes. Happens on special teams when he's like blocking for a kickoff, and it happens when he's blocking for like bubble screens and stuff too. Total whiff, give up the play. But if he can get his hands on you, he will do his best. But again, a $182, not that hard for a linebacker to beat that, put him down. Not that hard for an athletic safety to beat that and put him into the ground. And there's some pretty rough reps on his tape of that. I want to talk more about the special teams thing, and then like the overall kind of give chair, because I'm not just going to sit here and say the Vikings are idiots and I know better than them, right? Like, what were they thinking, and how does my take reconcile with what they were thinking, or am I missing something? Like, an important question to ask. So that'll be next on Locked On Vikings. So I've pretty much laid out what I don't like and do like about Tai Felton as a receiver. And what it comes down to is, I'm not going to call it a lack of polish. It doesn't read to me as rawness, but it's a lack of tools. He's got one tool that he's very fast, and another tool that he's pretty good at, specifically running a comeback, and then like willingness. And that's kind of it. And it just is like a little bit lacking for coming NFL competition. That looks awesome against Villanova, but I didn't really see it become the dominant presence that you want if you're expecting this guy to be like a regular member of an NFL rotation. That's a different bar. But part of the logic here is special teams. So let's talk about special teams. Kwesi's called Tai Felton a force-phase special teamer, and the reporting around drafting Tai Felton is that both Keenan McCardle and Matt Daniels signed off on the thing. We're excited about the pick. Cool. Having a 4-phase special teamer means punt return, punt coverage, kick return, kick coverage. Those are the 4 teams that are going to like super determine like roster spots and active on game day stuff, and field goal units, not really part of the equation. So let's go through them. As a punt returner, we didn't get a lot of information. He wasn't bad as a punt returner. He didn't have like punt muffs or anything like that. It looked fine, but Maryland's punt jammers were disastrous. And so basically constant fair catches. He got to return 2 punts all year. He was the punt returner, I think, most of the year. But he only got to return 2 punts the whole season. So unfortunately, we can't really get a lot out of that. I'm not going to hold it against him, but it can't really go in the win column for him either. We'll see if he wins that job. There are other guys from undrafted free agency and pro free agency that are also going to vie for that job. So we'll see how that all shakes out in camp. We'll kind of put a pin in it and save it for another day. In terms of punt gunning, that is probably the one that he looks most important to. Not probably. That's very much the one where he looks like an NFL pro. Like a guy, oh, wow, this guy could make noise in the NFL as a punt gunner. This is the one. And what he does is burst off the line really, really fast. He actually got a really good explosion score in his athletic testing, good like jumps. And I think you see it here. And a good 10 split and stuff. Like you see him get up from 0 to 60 really, really fast. Most of these are pretty uncontested. If they are contested, like if it's off coverage, he's just going to run by you. And if you're doing the thing where you're like, your hips are pointed to the middle of the field, and you're allowing that free release and you're just going to go do a speed game thing, which a lot of people do against him because he's just too fast to play him with square hips. To turn all the way around and get running takes too long. So you give yourself a head start basically, but then you're giving him a free release and he's going to be really, really fast and get down the field. And on a punt, you have 50 yards of space to go make separation. It's much different than a route where you have to get by somebody and get a step on them in the first 10 to 15 yards of that route. Otherwise it takes you too long. You can run by somebody in 60 yards, but who's throwing that? So as a punt gunner, a lot of the problems that plague him as a route runner no longer apply, and it looks awesome. So he can blast by somebody and get down really well. The problem is once the dog catches the car, he doesn't know what to do. He whiffs tackles a lot. I don't want to scare you, but the name Dan Chisena really came to my mind. Zoom down the field every single time, be the first guy there every single time, miss the tackle every single time. Your teammates need to clean up after you every single time. And that's worse than just being a guy that's like not, taking advantage of the opportunities that you're giving yourself. It can really blow up an angle because as the jammer or as the gunner, you're cutting off a whole side of the field. So if you screw up and miss your tackle, that whole side of the field is open and all of your pursuit defenders that are supposed to close that off for you now can't make the play because you didn't close it off for them. When he misses the tackle, a lot of times it's because he misses high or because he just can't break down. He just cannot decelerate quickly enough. And it makes him really, really easy to juke, just like it is on the blockers. He just gets too far and can't slam the brakes on it. And he's not very responsible about doing that. So Dan Chisena as a punt gunner. Hey, Dan Chisena started as a punt gunner on an NFL team. Like, that is a model that happened. Was it good? We'll leave that up to you to decide. But that is the package, more or less, that it was at Maryland. If he can learn to break down, that can be really lethal. That can be really, really valuable. But again, assembly required for the special teams part too. So there's rawness there. For the kickoff units, on kickoff coverage, very much the fastest guy. I didn't get to see a lot of it coming up. I didn't get to see a lot of like usefulness in the kickoff coverage, not by any fault of his, but just because there's a lot of touchbacks. There's only so many actual returns, and you can't guarantee that they're going to go his way or anything like that. So unfortunately, the games that I was able to get my hands on for special teams tape, I didn't really get to see him have to like display skills. But from a physicality angle, if he's in a full sprint, you get a hand on him, he gets knocked over by a stiff breeze. That did happen once for whatever that's worth, but it was only one play, so it's not really worth like putting in ink. Kickoff return, again, lots of touchbacks, so a lot of this didn't come up, but you saw the same thing where he would go super deep, get juked, and then the guy would get past him. So I didn't like it. I didn't like that. I didn't like... You can't really tell him as a punt returner or on kickoff coverage units. I didn't get a great sense. That doesn't mean that I don't dislike that part, but I got to kind of zero it out. I got to give it an I grade and set it aside. And the ones I did see were helpful, but at best, like good but fatally flawed. At worst, untenable. And you need to like grow in this position before I can play you there. So I think there's a difference between he played all four units and he was good at all four units. And what I saw had a lot of problems. So here's what I think is happening in the room, right? You can kind of tell by the draft behind the scenes video that there is not a lot of talk about Tai Felton. Like you don't hear them going, oh, Tai is falling throughout all of day 2. They kind of wait till day 2 and then 97 comes up and they're like, what trades do we have? Like they clearly did not like who was on the board at 97. And they make their trade. They're talking about like Sam Howell there, right? It's not like when they come in for day 3 and they're going, okay, Kobe King's there at 139. Do we want to do that or do we want to do Tyrion? Oh my God, Kobe King is there at 201. Or where they're talking about Donovan Jackson for half of night 1. That was not featured. And if it existed, you best believe it would have been. So what I think happens here is they trade back to 102. They can't find another trade that they like. They go, okay, let's just pick. Who are we going to take? I guess Felton. Like they just don't like the board and they just take somebody off it because they didn't get a deal done. In terms of what Keenan McCardell sees, there's enough for somebody who believes in themselves a lot as a wide receiver coach to say, I can fix him, right? He's fast. He's willing. I can figure out everything else. I can teach him all this other stuff. We can work with him. He's a project, but we can work with him. Yeah, I guess I can do that. And on special teams, it's the same thing, right? Well, I can't teach speed, but I can teach tackling, right? We can drill his tackling. We can do all that. So for two guys that have, I think, earned a right to believe in themselves, signing off on that doesn't surprise me, even though I think that there is a lot of work to be done. And for me, the way I'm looking at this as a draft pick is, if you look at any draft prospect and say, well, the coaches can just fix all the bad stuff, everyone's a first rounder. You know what I mean? Like that can't be the standard that we apply to guys as soon as the Vikings take them. We're just being too much of homers then, right? And I want to not do that. So I look at how much assembly is required. Okay, the vision of this guy, well, if he can, learn how to restack his routes, if he can eat some potatoes and get a little bulkier so he doesn't get knocked off his routes so bad, if he can learn to stop tipping his routes, if he can, blah, 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 if he can fix all of these things, then suddenly you have a 4-3 receiver that's good. Well, you had to make him good first. He is a 4-3 now, and you have to make him good later. That is assembly required to me. And at pick 102, that's too much assembly required for me to like this pick. That's just, there's two in the middle of the draft like that. There are often enough to make it the expectation. There are receivers with less assembly required that can immediately come in and be part of your rotation. And on special teams, there's assembly required as well. You can look at me all you want and say, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. And maybe I don't. Maybe I'm going to learn everything about wide receiver that I didn't know. Maybe there's some secret hidden thing that he's doing that I just can't see because I'm too much of an idiot about football. It wouldn't be the first time. Okay. And that's why I give it, hey, go out and camp, ball out, turn heads, make everybody excited, go be the dude in OTAs. He looks really cool. That's awesome. But for me, the only thing, if I were running an NFL offense, the only thing that I would trust Tai Felton to do in the state that he comes out of in college is clear outs, is run cardio and go be a decoy. That's the only thing I would trust. And if he gains new skills that he didn't have in college and becomes a better receiver, that kind of applies to everybody and doesn't really work as an argument for why he should have been drafted this high. And the last thing I'll say is teams make bad picks all the time. Newsflash, the Vikings drafted 5 players. They're not all 5 going to be good picks. This is just not how this works. It's not ever how it works. If that is your expectation, you're being either a homer or you're setting a completely impossible expectation for Kwesi probably because you don't like him. That's not how it ever happens. And if we were to try to guess which ones are going to live up to their draft stock and which ones aren't, to me, Tai Felton's is the most obvious answer. I'll talk to you all tomorrow, and as always, Skol.